Welcome into Training Camp Report presented by Frontier. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. It is day 2. We already got the day 1 jitters out of the way. Now we're into training camp.
What day is it when we all start using the line of it's like Groundhog Day? It's like every day's the same. Because you know
I
that
feel
day's
like day
coming.
2 already.
We're already there?
Are we already there?
I don't know. I still feel like it's fresh at this point.
It's true. It's very fresh. I think probably a weekend is when it
yeah.
starts feeling like that. But thankfully, I mean, we got 2 different weeks of joint practices. We're going to have those preseason games so that it'll get mixed up a little bit sooner than a typical training camp,
I thought we were
think.
going to have milkshakes every day.
I know. I'm so sorry. We promised you that. We misled you here. All right. So we always like to start now. We couldn't start day 1 because we didn't have one from the day before. But now we have a Ticketmaster play of the day based on yesterday's practice. So let's check that out. All right. Here's our play of the day. And, of course, starts with number 12, as most plays of the day do.
You know, I was standing on the sideline pretty close to where he caught that ball when that play happened, and it didn't look like it was going to be a successful play when that ball was about halfway there, because not because there was anything wrong with the pass or the route, but there were 2 defenders that were right there. But it was just Rashaad was able to find the ball first, and he adjusted and sort of cut underneath one of the 2 defenders, and so he actually high pointed the ball as they're taught to do. So he made a really nice play on the ball and just found it before the defensive backs did. And afterwards, when he caught it, he was cutting away. And, I mean, every play in training camp is a touchdown. But this one, I think, legitimately would have been a touchdown.
Yeah, and speaking of that, especially with Rashaad Perriman, we've seen that there are so many guys in this receiver room that are capable of the big play.
Yeah, and we just added another one.
And we just added another one as well. It's just unbelievable when you go down the list of names in this room. And so I know that you found a stat that was so interesting about long touchdowns in particular and who you might expect those to go to on our team. So let's go ahead and pull that graphic up and see that. But tell us a little bit about this stat and what stands out to you.
Well, yeah, the reason that I thought about this and looked it up was because Rashaad made that great play, and I think probably the second best play by a receiver yesterday in a day where the receivers were going nuts. They were really put on a show. Lots of different guys made big catches, but probably the second best one was a one-hander by Cyril Grayson on a go route into the corner of the end zone. And then so I looked it up. You know, Cyril Grayson and Rashaad Perriman, as you can see here, were responsible for 3 of the 4 longest passing plays, touchdowns that the Buccaneers had last year.
That's
and you know, I mean, they didn't have a ton of volume, either one of them, and that doesn't even include the game-winning touchdown by Cyril Grayson against the Jets, because that was like 33 yards.
Right.
But big plays, like you said, can come from a lot of different players on this receiving core, and that's why it's such an intriguing position in this training camp, because, I mean, you got Mike Evans and you got Chris Godwin, who apparently is doing well in his recovery from his knee injury, and you've got you got Russell Gage now, and you have Julio Jones now, but then you also have depth guys like right here, Rashaad Perriman, who I think Tom Brady's grown to really like playing with a couple of these guys, and he knows their big play potential, and it showed yesterday and it showed last season.
I think that this is going to be one of the most interesting things to watch because it is such a stacked room. I think maybe Scotty Miller said something yesterday about how he's like, this has to be one of the most talented wide receiver rooms in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah.
So now how many people, and then now, of course, there you see Julio Jones officially in a Bucs uniform now.
I'm not feeling that 85.
Oh, really?
I mean, he was 11 for so long,
It's
but
true.
85, that doesn't look like Julio Jones to me.
Interesting. Well, is he?
It definitely is Julio Jones.
It is.
Don't
yes.
get me wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not a mistaken identity. This is him. We're just used to, especially also that Falcons uniform. So it's always weird to see a guy in a new uniform.
Yeah. So Julio missed, I think, 14 games over the last 2 seasons due to injuries that just seemed to linger, mostly hamstrings. But he said yesterday that he's fully 100% healthy. Todd Bowles says he's fully healthy, and that they're just going to try to maintain that. And I think the idea there is, he's going to start practicing. He gets his first practice today because he signed right in the middle of practice yesterday. But I think I would be surprised if they didn't sort of gradually amp up his work. And so just bring him along gradually, because there isn't a lack of depth in the receiving core. And all the guys we've discussed, they get their snaps, but we haven't even discussed the guys like, you know, maybe Devin Tompkins or somebody like that who they'd like to get enough reps to see what he looks like. And as Coach Bowles pointed out yesterday, fans who have been or witnessed the last couple of years' camps and this one might notice a difference in that when they got together for teamwork, they only practiced on one field, not 2. As you recall, Bruce Arians liked to split it into 2 so that you could have ones-on-ones going on one field and then a lot of the young guys going on the other field, and that way they got a lot more reps than they wouldn't have. Todd Bowles came into this camp, and the whole staff decided together that, because there was a lot of fatigue and injuries down the stretch last year, that it was probably better this year at least to do one field, and so it sort of kind of ramp up these guys reps rather than trying to create more of them.
Right, yeah, and so that's going to be great to watch Julio get a chance to relax a little bit there. And of course, Brady is so good at helping receivers come along with the idea of what he wants out of them as well, that Julio, it's, he talked about in his presser of, I know the different routes to run. I know it's not going to take
I know what
lot.
an in cut is.
Yes, but then it's going to be that chemistry with Brady that I think is even more important than in terms of a playbook or getting him up to speed in that sense.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I would combine what Julio said, which you're absolutely right. He said things like, I don't know the playbook, I don't know the terminology, but I know what a go route is.
Right.
I know what a button hook is, I know what an in cut is, etc. But later, or maybe before, I can't remember what order it went, Kyle Rudolph was up there, and he made a point of pointing out that it was like, I know all the routes, but I don't know the routes as Tom Brady wants them run. And there were a few times during the practice where he ran the route the way he would have done it earlier in his career with other teams, and it wasn't what Tom wanted. And he's like, I have to learn that. And so he's told a number of guys, Tom Brady, Cam Brate, he's told a couple of them, he's like, just tell me when I get annoying because I'm going to keep asking you questions all the time.
And I can't imagine that that's ever going to hit a point. Brady doesn't seem like the guy that's going to be like, hey, you know what, let's stop talking about football here. Dial it back. Yeah, I don't think that's how Brady's become the GOAT, that's for sure. All right, well, we have plenty more here on Training Camp Report presented by Frontier. Now we're going to show you some highlights from yesterday's practice.
Rashaad White, running back, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, born and raised. I got 3 older brothers. I got 1 older sister, a younger sister. My older brothers, they really just play football. When I was watching my older brothers go out there and play, I was that little kid who would try to run on the field and things like that, and they got to be like, oh, somebody get their kid type deal. So that was me. So I just knew that when I was able and old enough to play football, I was going to do it. I went to Mount San Antonio College. It's out in Walnut, California, Southern California. I just went out there. I had to do 2 years out there because I was a qualifier coming out of high school, but bouncing back to junior college, that makes you a non-qualifier, so now you have to get an associate's degree, an AA degree. I would just say, it was tough. I was working jobs, playing football, going to school, working factories. It was all kind of stuff going on that was deep and dark, but, football was my light, and I knew that, I'll get through it as long as I just, keep a steady positive mindset and head. Football gives you a lot of values that, life that can help you off the field and life in general. So that's what it is. Just trying to be the best. If I do something, everything I do, regardless of what it is, might not be my sport. If we having a softball charity event or something, I'm going to try to hit the ball the farthest, hit home runs, just be the best out there. So that's just what really drives me in football. I just want to be the best at my position, want to be the best player on the field, and just go hard at everything I do. They can expect for me to just be a great teammate. Whatever my job is, whatever my role is, they can expect me to just do it at a high level. They can just expect a guy you see. I'm always smiling. I'm always just having fun. A guy that has fun out there, and a guy that's going to give his teammates his all, regardless of what I'm doing out there.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Frontier. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. We talked about the wide receiver position in that first block, and now let's flip to the other side of the ball, and another one of the positions that I think is so interesting for training camp in terms of the depth of it, and less about who's going to make the roster probably, and more about just the way that it'll shake out in terms of who's starting and what does that even look like, is the safety position. So first of all, Logan Ryan, really interesting guy, new guy to be brought in here, and you definitely found some interesting stats in general about the defensive side of things. Let's go ahead and throw that graphic and tell me what you noticed about this and when it comes to Logan Ryan.
Well, Logan Ryan's been a very versatile defender over his years, and he's played like slot corner, he's played safety, and he's been put in a lot of different positions to do different things. Like in some slot corners, like say Rondé Barber, when they play in the slot, they get used as a blitzer a lot, so they end up getting sacks. Obviously, as you see here, he has obviously done that. He's had a lot of forced fumbles. He's had a lot of interceptions. And as this list shows, and I like to point out that Lonnie David is on it too.
Of course, yeah.
Since 2013, these are only 5 defenders who've had at least 10 interceptions, 10 sacks, and 10 forced fumbles. So
it's incredible.
And we saw him make a big play yesterday.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about what you saw from that play, and then what you think when he is that versatile, what it will look like here with the Bucs.
On that particular play, he was playing, I don't know, somewhere in the middle. It was a red zone play. He was behind the intended target, who was somewhere around the 3 or 4 yard line, and he just made a really nice break on the ball. So he got there as the ball arrived, and that ended up making it be a deflection up in the air that went back towards the end zone, and Carlton Davis was able to intercept it really easily. So in the stats, Carlton Davis would get the interception,
right.
But Logan Ryan made the play happen, and that's good because you want playmakers back there.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the safeties, kind of as you were alluding to, is it's one of the few positions where there's a whole lot of turnover, really, because Jordan Whitehead, you have a significant departure in Jordan Whitehead, and you have a couple significant additions in Logan Ryan and Keanu O'Neal, and then you have Mike Edwards, who, Bucs draftee from, this is his 4th season. He was a 3rd-round draft pick during that stretch where the Bucs were drafting a ton of DBs, and almost all of them were working out, like Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting and Antoine Winfield and Jordan Whitehead, so on. And Edwards has had some really nice moments. I mean, he's known as a ball hawk. He's great at finding the ball when he's on the field, but I don't think he's gotten as much playing time since his rookie year that he would have liked. Jordan Whitehead was the starter, and then Winfield came in, and he was immediately a starter. So this is an opportunity for Edwards to get a lot of snaps, perhaps be the main starter next to Antoine Winfield, and that's good. But as I said yesterday, I think what we're really going to see isn't just a one-person solution to Jordan Whitehead's departure. I think with those additions and with Mike Edwards getting more playing time, what you're going to find is a lot of interesting packages, a lot of different things that Todd Bowles and the rest of the defensive coaches can do with these guys. And we actually saw some of that yesterday. There was first-team snaps where Antoine Winfield and Mike Edwards were on the field, but so was Logan Ryan. And right there you see, I don't know if it was a nickel, if it was a dime. I didn't count the number of cornerbacks. If there were 3 cornerbacks, it would probably be a dime. But the point is, they're going to find ways to use all those guys. And on one of the snaps where I noticed this happening, Logan Ryan was actually back in a two-deep safety look with Edwards, and it was Antoine Winfield who lined up right on the edge of the line like he might be blitzing, or at least looking like he was going to blitz, and then maybe they drop into something else. But the point is, it was a different look, and it's because you have such versatile guys. All 3 of those guys I just mentioned are really versatile in where they can line up: Winfield, Logan Ryan, and Mike Edwards. And we haven't even talked about how Keanu O'Neal might fit into the picture. So I think you're going to see a lot of creative stuff with the safeties this year.
And I think that makes perfect sense of why a guy like Logan Ryan would be brought in this year when Todd Bowles is now the head coach, because we know how much, whether it was as the defensive coordinator or now as the head coach, he is a guy who loves that versatility, because he loves to be able to bring so many different packages and not have people know, are you blitzing, are you dropping back, and to have guys that can be that confusing, because it's like what we talked about with Gronk on offense of, is he blocking, is he running a route, that he created such confusion that it's almost like Logan Ryan could be that on the other side of guys like him. And then same thing with Keanu O'Neal, of where he was a linebacker and now he's a safety, that these guys can do so many different things. It really seems like it would give that Todd Bowles defense that much more confusion to throw, besides even just different packages.
I really like the Todd Bowles point, because there's a couple sub-points here. One, Todd Bowles' defenses have always, at least since he's been here, have always been among the highest in terms of blitz percentage. So he is going to bring a lot of blitzes, but he's very creative with them, dropping different guys and bringing different guys. But maybe even more importantly is that Todd Bowles and a lot of defensive coordinators, one of the main things they want to do is give the quarterback a pre-snap look that is different than what that once the snap happens, it's not going to be what they think it is. So it's a disguise. It's making it look like something that's going to be something else, because the stats show every quarterback in the league, no matter how good he is worse when the defensive coordinator can make him think he's looking at a certain defense and then it's something else.
That's so interesting. All right, well, we are going to take one last final break here, and then we'll have another segment coming at you. So now we have one of our favorite segments, Camp Cam, and this is where we get to know the guys off the field a little bit. This is a very divisive question that was asked. It was who can get the aux, meaning who could be in charge of the music.
I had to ask somebody what that meant.
I know. That's what we're here for, the intergenerational.
Who would you not give the aux to?
Yes, who would you not give the aux to? In other words, who are we not trusting here? Take a look.
Who on the team shouldn't get the aux? Easily. Ryan Jensen, hell no. You know who should get the aux? Me and Big Willie.
Ain't gonna lie, Donnie been playing some crazy stuff lately.
I'm gonna say Donnie should be on the aux.
Donovan Smith ever get the aux because he played the wackest music ever.
Probably Donnie. He always got the aux. He was playing some slow stuff. Should not get the aux.
Joe Tryon, man. Gotta go with Joe.
Hate to say it, Nacho can't get the aux in my.
Probably me. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna play that old school,
Who on the team shouldn't get the aux? I would say me because I'm a 90s R&B you to death.
Jake Camarda, punter, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm from Norcross, Georgia, part of a family of 4. Mom, dad, and my sister. Grew up playing baseball, a little bit of flag football, a little bit of basketball, and eventually got into tackle football, probably closer to the age of 8th grade. Transitioning from winning the national championship on my way to getting to where I am now, it's been crazy. Definitely took a lot of the things that I learned while I was at Georgia, and everything that I learned there, I took it and brought with me towards my preparation for the next level and my preparation to get to the place that I am today. Yeah, since being here in Tampa, I've definitely learned a lot, more than I probably ever would have imagined I'd have learned. Been playing the game for a while now. You think that you've learned a lot, but you really get to this level and you learn that you're still a student of the game, and there's just so much more to learn. So just being around this coaching staff and around everybody here, I've been able to learn so much more about the game and about what I do that can make me a better player. This season will be a success for me if we could, go to the Super Bowl and win. That's the ultimate goal in this game, and that's what we're looking for.
I will definitely be interested to see Jake Camarda and what he brings. He's got a very interesting attitude
he
for a
told me
punter.
about that.
So I think he calls himself the Joker out there. Not a thing you typically hear from the punter.
Okay.
So we will definitely talk more about him later in this camp for sure. But for now, one of the recent storylines was about Leonard Fournette, and I think that now we've been able to see him out here. Heard Coach Bowles talk about him. So what have we learned in the last day or so about Fournette coming back in here into camp?
Let's rewind it back to minicamp, and Leonard Fournette spoke with the media after one of the practices, and he said that he wasn't yet in the at the playing weight that he wanted to be, but that he would get there. It would be weight. He was working on it, and he would get there in time. But in the dead time between minicamp and training camp, people are looking for stories. So there was sort of a lot of rumbling out there that maybe he was more out of shape than the team anticipated, or that was good for him at the start of training camp. But I think we all can relax a little bit now, especially those fantasy football players out there. We're wondering if they should still have him in the first round. He looked fine. Coach Bowles says he was very happy with where he was at. He was explosive. He was quick. When they had the conditioning running test on Tuesday, he had no problem with it whatsoever. And that Bowles went so far as to say if we had, he could play a game today. So put your mind at ease. Leonard Fournette knows what he's doing, and when the game starts, he's going to be ready.
Which is great, because honestly, to be able to say that he could play a game today, that is not always something you say about any player's day one of training camp. I mean, that's the whole point of training camp, is theoretically it helps you get to that point. So he already feels that way about him day one. I do think that's
I guess that means
sign.
he's as well along as everybody. You don't have to worry about him as opposed to anybody else. And he did point out, this is Todd Bowles, that there are a number of players who come to camp and they're not in their tip-top peak shape, and he doesn't even necessarily want them to be there because training camp is grueling, and you just by doing training camp you tend to lose 4 or 5 pounds.
Right.
And so training camp, it's not like it used to be in the old days where players didn't work, they had other jobs and they didn't even work out at all, and when you hit training camp, that's when you started to get in shape, and training camp was 6 weeks long.
Right.
I'm talking the real old days before you
The
retired,
real old
Casey.
days, yes.
But
walking uphill both ways to training camp.
in the snow.
Yeah.
So, no, there was no, I mean, these guys come here in pretty good shape, but some of them come here maybe purposely knowing that camp is going to get them in peak shape by the time when it really matters, which is the regular season games.
So now let's talk a little bit about what Fournette has meant to this team and the role he has had and the type of running back he's been. I know we have a graphic here of what he's done since 2021. So what have you learned about his role to this offense and, again, the type of running back he's been and what we can expect from him now moving forward?
Well, obviously, in 2020, it was sort of a timeshare, and Ronald Jones had the lead until he had some injury issues or COVID at the end of that season, and Leonard Fournette, exploded in the playoffs. And then he obviously didn't take him long in 2021 to emerge as the obvious number one back, and he kept it that way all through the year, although he missed some time at the end of the season due to injury. But Leonard Fournette people thought he had a pretty good year last year. There's some numbers here that indicate how important and good he really was last year. I mean, look at that. That was his best yards per carry figure in his entire career,
Wow.
4.5. Now, he was playing behind an offensive line that sent 3 players to the Pro Bowl, so that helps too. But he was, at the time he got hurt, he was leading all NFL running backs with 69 receptions. And I lost the other 2 notes because we had the graphic up too long.
yeah.
But there was a couple other good notes to indicate that he was having, I think 10 touchdowns. First Bucs running back with 10 touchdowns in a season since 2012. So there are a lot of ways you can look at that season, and it was even more successful than maybe some people realized.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And so knowing he's the guy, he's been the primary back here and what he's been able to do, how do you see the rest of that running back room shaping up, and how do you distribute the carries, the downs? What do you need to really supplement a guy like Fournette?
Well, it's a good question because last year there wasn't a whole lot of. So I mean, he was kind of doing it all. I mean, he played by far the most snaps. He was on the field for more third downs than you might have expected at the beginning of the season. When you had Giovanni Bernard, and you think maybe he's going to be your third down back. Gio had some injuries along the way, but he didn't really carve out a huge role as a third down back. But now you add Rashaad White, who the Buccaneers drafted in the 3rd round, who was a dynamic player at ASU, and he has the ability to catch passes. He's got natural hands, and he's really good in the open field. And at the point they drafted him, they said he could factor in right away as a third down back who can catch passes, but he can also run between the tackles. So and you have Keyshawn Vaughn in the mix too. So I think it's possible that I was pointing out how great Leonard Fournette was last year and how his conditioning is not an issue. It's still possible that he gets a slightly smaller share of the snaps because I think they would like to make it, like most NFL teams do now, more of a running back by committee to keep them all fresh,
Right.
and to have some different looks. So I could see Rashaad White carving out a pretty decent role,
Interesting.
particularly on third downs.
Yeah, that's going to be intriguing. And then, of course, we'll kind of close with this. You talked about how he got those amazing stats, especially thanks to a pretty good offensive line last year, and that's a position group that now there's a little bit of questions when it comes to the interior part. You still have Ryan Jensen back, but you lose Ali Marpet, you lose Alex Kappa, and especially that replacement for Ali Marpet has been an interesting storyline. So tell us what we learned on day 1 of camp in terms of where things might stand as of now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all pretty amazed when, after the loss of Alex Kappa, the Bucs solved that problem so quickly with trading a 5th-round pick for Shaq Mason. So you got right guard pretty much locked down, but left guard is a wide-open competition, and probably the 2 top competitors are Aaron Stinney and Luke Gedeke, the 2nd-round pick. Aaron Stinney, of course, had that run during the Super Bowl run in the playoffs where he played right guard in place of the injured Kappa and did really well. So, but it's been made clear that that's a pretty open competition. Yesterday, taking first-team snaps, the first guy in there with the first team was Aaron Stinney. Now, I'm not sure that says anything because I think most coaches would go with the incumbent
Right.
and with the veteran first. But it's good for Aaron, and if he gets in there and just dominates from the get-go, he could lock down the position early, which is something I was saying yesterday was I'd like to see because that offensive line needs to build chemistry. So the sooner you know who's going to be starting there, the better you can do so.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this 2nd day of Training Camp Report presented by Frontier. Thank you guys so much again for joining us. And we are back here every single day that they have practice. We are basically recording the first 30 minutes that are open to video, trying to show you guys as many shots of practice as possible, especially for those of you who don't get a chance to come out here and make it. So again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.